again.
It really was the all-American success story from 2,000 to 36 million in about 10 years.
From one warehouse in 1979 to 6 adjoining warehouse showrooms, the build was first.
She says, your mother's missing and possibly kidnapped. I am a psychic detective for law enforcement. I said, I can see this blue. There's blue everywhere.
Picture that's emerging is there's a dire financial issue that's going on inside the house.
In the back of the van is a shovel and a pick. What's the purpose of that?
And I always carry a shovel.
What were you doing out there for 2 hours in the desert?
It had nothing to do with her disappearing.
No, I did not.
Where the hell is that woman's body?
I was not prepared to have to account for my tongue.
This whole thing is going to come down to the Antichrist.
Thanks, Mom.
In the Sonoran Desert, east of Casa Grande, Arizona, sagebrush and towering saguaro cacti dot the remote landscape.
All around it is just a brown desert. It is rough, scrubby bushes. There's no flowers. You know, nothing is going on, except there's lots of saguaro cactus.
In early January 2006, miles from the nearest rest stop, a family parks at an abandoned motel and sets out to do some rock and fossil hunting.
They're looking around and they're finding some turquoise, maybe a piece of alabaster. And all of a sudden, the son comes running up and says, we gotta get out of here. We gotta get out of here. He's obviously afraid. The mother starts wandering up a little bit and then sees a skull sticking out of the earth with a little tuft of blonde hair and goes, oh my God, that's a body.
The family calls the authorities to report the grisly find.
A group of forensic investigators, along with detectives from Tempe Police Department, all responded out there and proceeded to do a body recovery.
The crime scene technicians continue to process their crime scene. They're removing these boulders and uncovering a black tarp underneath it, which contained the mummified remains of the victim. The shallow grave was approximately 1.5 feet deep. Whoever buried this body in the shallow grave would have definitely needed a pickaxe and a shovel to dig through this soil.
I think the person who placed these buried remains there intended all along to have them never be discovered. There's a high likelihood that a crime occurred.
Big question on everybody's mind is, who is this person? Buried in the backyard of this motel.
Tempe, Arizona, has always been a place of newcomers. And with newcomers come new ideas. There's a lot of business startups here. There's a lot of new ideas happening. Back in 1979, in Tempe, I got the idea for a consignment furniture store. And so I borrowed $2,000 from my grandmother and just basically opened the store. My mother had gotten a divorce 15 years before. And we started Terry's Consign and Design Furnishings, and it took off from the get-go. It really did.
Thanks to you and Mom, Consignment Furniture has expanded again. This beautiful Bernhardt sofa, and you save $1,400. Thanks, Mom.
Terry became a local celebrity. It really was the all-American success story from 2,000 to 36 million in about 10 years, and lots of fun. We'd go everywhere and be recognized, and people would always look at me. Aren't you that girl? Aren't you and your mother? You own a business together. At that time in her life, my mother really came alive. It was fun to watch her be so happy.
With all the success from the store, Loretta moves into a larger home, but soon starts to feel lonely. Hoping to meet a friend, she decides to rent a room.
So Terry tells her, if you don't like living by yourself, why don't you get a renter? You got the other side of the house. Why don't you rent that out?
My mom put an ad in the paper for somebody, and a man that had just come back from Scotland came and answered the ad.
Up drives this guy on a motorcycle. He's good looking. He's tall. He looks suave. They start talking.
He was handsome, blue eyes, and talked kind of with an English accent. I'm tall. And they met and talked about renting out a room.
He says, I'm from Scotland, and I've been working in Saudi Arabia for Bechtel. And I'm an inventor. I've got several inventions going on.
By the time they came over to meet me at my house, I thought, I don't think this is just a roommate situation. She was kind of beaming from ear to ear. He actually moved in. It seems like it was only about a week or 2 weeks, but my mom was happy and she was excited.
Loretta had hoped for a friendly roommate. She unexpectedly found a romantic companion.
She immediately was attracted to this guy. So they become a couple, and they're a damn good-looking couple. She's 50, he's 48. They're both fit. They both look great. I mean, when they walk down the street together, people turn and look at them.
My mother and I both were so excited about all of his ideas. We'd have dinners together and laugh and had a good time. Christmas together, holidays.
By 2004, the fashionable, successful couple, now in their late 60s, has been together 17 years.
They were the perfect couple, made for each other.
And Terry's consignment stores are thriving too.
So after about 15 years being the business, I said, we're going to franchise. Very soon we went from 5 stores in the Phoenix area to San Diego and Sacramento and Denver, Atlanta, Texas. By then, I bought out my mother. So she could put time into building the relationship with Ta.
In late December that year, Ta is headed to Tucson for a meeting about an upcoming project. Loretta decides to tag along and do some Christmas shopping.
Ta called and said, your mom and I are going down to Tucson.
He says, I have a conference there with some people about one of my inventions.
The couple makes the almost 2-hour drive from Tempe to Tucson. Ta drops Loretta off at a local mall and then heads to his meeting. When he returns to pick her up 2 hours later, she's nowhere to be found.
I think we got a call about 4:30. I got on the phone and Ta says, your mother's missing. She was shopping at Dillard's and I came back to get her and she's missing. I said, oh, Ta, just go back in, look around, check the front counter. I said, I can't do anything right now. I'm in a meeting, so call me later. Hung up the phone. I think about 40 minutes later, he calls again and he says, your mother's still missing. Something's happened, I think.
Terry puts on the phone, and she runs to her Porsche. It's a 2-hour drive between Phoenix and Tucson. She makes it an hour and 10 minutes.
Mall security confirms that there have been no medical emergencies on the premises. At 5:44 p.m., Ta calls 911 to report Loretta missing.
Tucson Police.
My wife missing. We're at Dillard's at Park Mall. I was to pick her up at 4. I was here at 4, and she did not show up, which is not like her.
Terry Barasaka arrives at the scene, and she was very distraught. By this time, there were many police officers at the mall. it's a strong possibility that a person like Loretta, very well dressed, looks affluent, elderly, and not paying attention to her surroundings, may have appeared as a target to steal her purse, rob her. When we spoke with Terry, she indicated to detectives that Loretta is a well-known person in the Phoenix area with her business and her commercials, and felt that her mother may have been kidnapped.
Terry thought she's in the limelight locally in ways, worth some money.
Now this is a situation of a missing person to possibly an abduction.
I was taking every call that came in.
The psychics come out of the woodwork.
I said, you're going to find out that your mother received a letter. The house is in foreclosure.
"69-year-old Loretta Bowersock has disappeared from a Tucson shopping mall. As a prominent businesswoman who's achieved notable success, investigators have reason to believe the local celebrity may have been the target of kidnappers.
In mall parking lots, you could hide in plain sight, visibly. Anybody's vulnerable.
It's important to locate Loretta quickly because Loretta was described as a 69-year-old elderly person. We don't know if she's in danger. So in the first few hours, it's very important to apply all the resources available to this search. In these types of investigations into missing persons, it's not uncommon for the last person to see the victim to become the primary person of interest. But Todd Enderle was very concerned, distraught, and expressed genuine concern for her disappearance. He described as coming to Tucson for a business meeting / mini vacation. He was going to meet with some folks here at the University of Arizona where he was going to present a solar panel invention. Following that, him and Loretta were going to go to Portal, New Mexico, where they were going to dig for geodes. At that time, neither Tom or Terry were suspects in Loretta's disappearance.
Taw had told Tucson detectives that after he had dropped Loretta off, he had observed a white van driving the mall parking lot, and to him was acting suspicious.
It goes, when I was leaving the Dillard store, there was a white van that came in and went around the circle, and I saw this door open up, then it shut, and by the time I got back around to it, they had taken off.
Detectives pressed Todd with a little bit more information. He believes he may have seen that same vehicle hours earlier in Casa Grande and possibly following him. This information changes the dynamics. A vehicle may have been following Todd and Loretta, and now persons associated with this suspicious vehicle may have kidnapped Loretta. It changes our approach. This description that was given now of a white van went out as a bolo. Be on the lookout and attempt to locate this vehicle. Patrol, including K-9 officers, bicycle patrol, and the air support unit and the helicopter, conducted a search both inside and outside the Park Place Mall and the surrounding area, with no success. There's dozens of video cameras within the mall itself, and then also within the Dillard's department store. There's dozens of cameras, different angles covering entrances and exits. Those were all checked by police officers and detectives. So far, there is no sign of Loretta from any of the video surveillance that we obtained. There was video surveillance on the parking lot area, but it appeared that Todd's car was in an area where the video surveillance didn't capture his vehicle.
There is no sign of Loretta inside the mall. It's as if she has simply vanished.
I remember at the end of that first day, I would say I was in shock.
Terry checks herself into the same Tucson hotel where her mother and Ta are staying.
That night, I got on the phone with every media person I knew. I had media, I had newspaper, I had stories in Phoenix, stories up in Tucson.
Terry was trying to make the 10 p.m. cutoff for news so that her mother's photograph could be shown on the news, and hopefully somebody with information on where she might be would come forward.
The media start asking questions about the white van, wanting to know what's going on. All we know is that Loretta Bowersock is not where she's supposed to be. There's 1,000 white vans in Arizona, and every one of them was suspect.
There's a lot of tips coming in, both to Tucson and to Tempe. People reporting sightings of Loretta, as well as people calling in tips on sighting white vans.
There is one call that is particularly alarming.
Tucson Police.
Hi, this is calling for resident. The car's coming back to our hotel premises.
Okay, well, I need to know what's going on.
One pulled up behind the van, and the other one acted like he was getting into the van. And that's when I started walking down here to see what's going on, because we have a woman that's missing from the hotel. The police have been down here all night.
You right?
And I know it's a van. And I chased his friend off the property. I'm wondering if they have anything to do with the disappearance of the lady that they're looking for.
Okay.
They're speeding off. Dang.
It has become apparent to both the police and to Terry that this kidnapping may be a real thing. I mean, my God, Ta, he never saw her actually go in the store, right? And the police are taking it seriously, and you damn well know that Terry's taking it seriously.
It's been 24 hours since 69-year-old Loretta Bowersock was last seen outside a Tucson shopping center.
They said there had been a really weird white van that was going around the hotel that day. So there's a white van that possibly kidnapped my mother at the mall. And now they see the van at the hotel. I couldn't believe it. And then I found a picture of my mom and made up flyers. So I headed out that morning and I hung flyers everywhere. I just really wanted to find my mother and know that she's okay. That's all I cared about.
It became a local front page story. It was broadcast on the various news broadcasts and in the paper, online websites for news organizations.
If Loretta was a kidnapping victim, then the process is eventually somebody would make contact just to indicate they have Loretta to begin a ransom demands. Both Ta and Terry were told to keep their phones charged and handy.
I was taking every call that came in because one of them could have known something. And, and my goal was to find my mother. That's it.
But the ransom request doesn't come. The kidnapping theory soon loses traction. Investigators believe more answers could lie at the couple's home in Tempe.
We asked detectives in Tempe to go to Loretta's and Ta's house.
From Tucson, Ta was asked if it would be okay if we searched the Tempe home. And he said it was okay, provided his consent to search it.
The house was pretty well kept, nothing in disarray. The detectives went through the mailbox and they found foreclosure paperwork in the mailbox. Loretta's house was being foreclosed upon. Maybe this wasn't a kidnapping at all.
Believing Loretta's finances could be a factor in her disappearance. For now, investigators choose to keep the information from Terry and Ta.
The detectives asked about, if maybe Ta recall it ever been abusive or anything like that. And I said, 17 years, they've had their ups and downs. But I don't think it's been any different than other couples. So I don't really feel like they have a problem.
Meanwhile, Terry's plea to the public yields a flood of calls.
The psychics swoop in on Terry. They come out of the woodwork. They've got theory after theory.
It did get to be a little bit crazy, but I had to really learn how to stay calm, not react. I got a call from a psychic, very well famous psychic calling. Her name is Marianne and wants to talk to you. She had many big cases I had heard about. I thought, well, that's interesting.
I'm a psychic detective for law enforcement. I work with law enforcement on every level, from county sheriffs all the way up to international law enforcement, and have for quite a while. When I look at a case, I can go into a room and see everything about that room, a detail like a newspaper, very unique gifts that I have from God, I believe.
I gave her a call and she introduced herself and she said, there's something going on with the house.
I said, you're going to find out that your mother received a letter from a man at the door. I said, Terry, the house is in foreclosure.
I said, that would never happen. My mother would do that. This wouldn't happen. I said, well, thank you. I'll just talk to you another time.
Terry calls me and tells me about her conversation with Marianne Morgan. And that information was not shared with anyone. It wasn't shared with the media. Nobody knew about that outside of our law enforcement circles. So I was a little bit kind of awestruck. And basically, I confirmed to Terry, yes, in fact, your mother's home was under foreclosure.
I would say I was in shock. My mom would make sure that's her house and make the payment. But I don't know that I knew all of their business.
The picture that's emerging is that there's a dire financial issue that's going on inside the house. In the garage, we found a number of boxes that contained stuffed away utility bills, home mortgage bills, late notices, foreclosure notices. They're all addressed to.
This is not adding up. Something's very wrong here. Something is really, really wrong here.
Loretta Bowersock vanished while on a holiday shopping trip to Tucson, Arizona, 2 days ago. An initial search of the Tempe home Loretta shares with boyfriend Taw Benderly reveals troubling financial concerns.
What we found out in the following days is that the financial situation concerning the house foreclosure only went deeper.
There was about 8 credit cards with about $40,000 on each credit card in my mother's name. I think there was a lot of things that my mom didn't tell me because she was too ashamed.
With questions mounting, investigators ask Taw for permission to search his car, still parked at the hotel in Tucson.
He had a pickaxe and a shovel still in his car. His car had a lot of brush in the undercarriage of it.
The dirty tools are alarming, but they mean nothing on their own. Investigators turn to Taw's cell phone for clues.
We had his phone number, and so we began the process of checking with cell phone providers to find where that phone had been. According to Taw Benderly, they left their home in Tempe at about 10:10 in the morning. They're driving eastbound on the Interstate 10. He said they arrived in the Casa Grande outlet area at around 11:30. They continue their journey, arriving at their hotel at about 12:30 p.m. Cell phone towers in the Casa Grande area that were picking up Ta's cell phone indicated that he spent much longer amount of time in and around that area. He said he arrived in Tucson at 12:30 p.m., but the hotel registration, which the timestamp was accurate, showed that he arrived at 2:38 p.m. So this is not matching up at all with what Ta is reporting in terms of his timeline. What were you doing out there for 2 hours in the desert?
Though he claims he dropped Loretta at the mall and headed to a business meeting at the University of Arizona, cell phone records failed to track the journey to the campus.
The police were suspecting Ta, but I wasn't there. I didn't believe it at all.
Terry was at a terrible crossroads mentally. She was so fearful for her mother, but this also was a guy who had stepped in as a stepfather for 17 years.
Investigators continue their search of the couple's house in Tempe.
They find a rolled up towel, and when they discover that it contains a black clutch purse, it's Loretta's purse. Contains her driver's license, her credit cards, and checkbook.
Everything she would need to be in Tucson to go shopping.
Ta had been adamant that Loretta, when he dropped her off, he saw her walking into the mall with her clutch purse. Yet her purse is found in her house. So this is changing how I'm looking at this case now. Finding Loretta's purses is a definite game changer. We're starting to see several red flags popping up. And I decided to ask Todd to come down to the police station the next day.
Has the finances been a problem between you and Loretta?
They're not a point of contention that is creating a rift or conflict.
In the back of the van is a shovel and a pick.
Yes.
What's the purpose of that?
I dig geodes. Sometimes I use the pick to break geodes, and I always carry a shovel in the car.
I tell him his timeline doesn't add up to what we're receiving, both from the cell phone company and also from his arrival at the hotel.
I was not prepared to have to account minute for minute for my time. I'm wondering if my watch was off.
I confront him with the fact that, look, we have detectives at your house in Tempe. They found Loretta's clutch purse. How is she supposedly shopping at Park Place Mall, and yet her purse is over here? And he was pretty shaken.
I don't know what you're talking about. I really don't.
I told him, I think something happened to Loretta, and I think you're not telling us the truth.
Plain and simple is she never made it down here. This whole thing is gonna come down like a deck of cards.
At this point in the investigation, he is number one suspect in this case, but we're just short of having enough evidence to make an arrest. I truly felt that Loretta was most likely dead, and that Tom was responsible for her death. But we can't really keep him. So I've told him, you're free to leave.
He returns to Tempe, to the home he shared with Loretta. But who is Ta Beverly?
A criminal history check revealed an arrest in the Washington, Virginia area for fraud activity.
Instead of coming home from Saudi Arabia and Bechtel, Ta Bentley had just gotten out of prison.
disappearance of Loretta Bowersock. Her partner, Taw Benderly, has emerged as the #1 suspect, but investigators don't have enough evidence to make an arrest.
Most of the information that Taw was giving detectives appeared to be inaccurate or some sort of attempt to disguise something that had gone wrong.
Taw went back to their house in Tempe, so I just went ahead and went home also. I was a little bit concerned about us all heading back to Tempe so soon because I felt like we still needed to look around Tucson quite a bit. But at the same time, I thought I could get home and kind of regroup.
She keeps checking on Taw. This is her only conduit to her mother. She wants to be sure he's okay.
Terry diligently checks in on Taw at the house every day. But on December 23rd, 9 days after Loretta went missing, Taw isn't picking up his phone.
I called, and there was no answer, which he had been pretty much answering every day. I called a couple more times and then called the Tempe police, and I said, I think something's wrong.
At that point, we had officers do a welfare check. Nobody's answering the house. We have a potential possible murder case. And so, mindset-wise, they don't know what they're going to be confronted with. Officers had their guns drawn. Once they make entry into the home, they methodically search it. Once they got to the garage, they found Taw hanging from an electrical cord. And he was deceased.
I was in shock. That was a really hard night because now I was going through, did he kill himself because he was, in so much sorrow? Or did he kill himself because he did kill her?
Poring over the couple's records, Terry soon discovers the extent of Taw's betrayal.
Terry finds Loretta's checkbook, and indeed, in the checkbook, it shows that every month, the first thing she writes is the mortgage payment. When they go to Taw's bank account, every month, that same amount is being deposited into his account. Apparently, he said to her, hey, I'll mail the rent check. He washes the rent check and remakes it out to himself and is stealing that money every single month. And then when the foreclosure notices start coming, he swipes that mail away before she ever sees it. The bottom line is that Taw had been embezzling from Loretta for years.
I notified Terry of financial issues at hand. I think at that point she was figuring out who Taw was.
He was basically, through my mother's name, frauding everything she had. So, did he ever really love her? Was this completely fraud?
What we're finding out from his family is how Taw had manipulated a lot of people before Loretta.
Since then, investigators find out that he had seduced and defrauded a female warden and defrauded 2 other women before he ever got to Loretta. He would just suck the blood out of everybody he could find and use his charm to get away with it. Taw Benderly was a serial abuser of women.
He was a charming predator. He only stayed about 3 to 5 years and walked away with usually about $1 million to $3 million. The person that I knew for the last 17 years wasn't Taw. I think he was a pathological liar.
So from the very first moment he opened his mouth, Taw Benderly was lying through his teeth. He wasn't even from Scotland.
Everything was a lie. That almost makes the earth kind of fall out from under your feet. Nothing was real.
Now Taw Benderly is dead, and Loretta Bowersock is still missing. It seems likely that Taw took the secrets of her disappearance to the grave.
You think that, okay, he committed suicide now and the case is over with. Not really. The case isn't really closed because where's Loretta?
With With cell phone pings to guide them, investigators search the desert.
To find a body buried in that desert area is like finding a needle in a haystack.
The search and rescue team consisted both ground search, people on foot, cadaver dogs searching for human remains.
After weeks with no result, the search is suspended. Terry is unwilling to give up.
I thought it's time to call Marianne, the psychic. We met at my mom's house.
I just immediately started hearing and seeing things, and I told her that Ta came up behind her with a plastic bag, put it over her head, and started strangling. She fought a little bit, but he was stronger. I said, I can see this blue. There's blue everywhere. I can hear children laughing, and it's from days gone by. That is where she's at. She's 150 feet from the blue.
I searched months and months and months and still hadn't found her, but I just couldn't give up. I needed to find my mother.
Where the hell is that woman's body? This poor daughter has been searching for her mother, never could find the mother. No one could find the mother. What happened to Loretta Bowersock?
Loretta Bowersock has been missing for almost 13 months. But her daughter Terry hasn't given up hope.
I thought for sure I was going to find her. And then months turned into months, turned into a long time.
And then on a brisk winter day, a family hikes through the tabletop wilderness southwest of Casa Grande.
The group was out hiking, looking for rocks, and they came across some skeletal remains.
The family calls the authorities to the desert location behind an abandoned motel.
Forensic investigators proceeded to do a body recovery.
The shallow grave was approximately 1.5 feet deep, along with numerous boulders that had been placed on top of the site.
They find skeletal remains that were wrapped in a bag.
They were determined to be the remains of Loretta Bowersock.
It was determined that her cause of death was asphyxia.
I got a phone call, and it was the Maricopa sheriff, and they said, "We found your mom." As much as this day was really hard, I was glad to know where she was. I knew where she was. I had her. I had her with me, and I was okay. I could stop looking now and start working on healing. They drove me out, and we all of a sudden come up to this motel. The sign is blue. The building is blue. And then they drive around to the back because he had gone way out in the desert, and the whole playground was blue. The very last thing that Marianne talked about with me before she left was that she saw blue. What is blue? And we don't know this until we found her.
But how had Loretta met such a terrible fate?
On December 13th, what I believe occurred is that she finally found out that the home was in foreclosure, You can see on her phone records that there's numerous phone calls to Wells Fargo Mortgage, trying to get a status on what is exactly going on.
Loretta would have gone berserk. Don't let the screen door hit you in the ass as you're out the door. You're done. You're gone.
There was a confrontation, and it turned violent. It's my conclusion that she died as a result of strangulation.
They believe he took a plastic bag and put it over her head and held it there until she suffocated to death.
You start putting all the pieces together. Reports from the cell phone companies, they're telling us he spent 2 hours in that Casa Grande area. He had a pickaxe and a shovel still in his car. The fact that his car had a lot of brush in the undercarriage of it. After reviewing many hours of video surveillance, there was no sign of a white van with a sliding door open. It was Todd that told us this information. There was never a white van.
The case is closed. In the end, Todd acted alone, murdering Loretta and burying her in the backyard of the motel.
I'm confident that had Todd not committed suicide, he would have been placed under arrest.
Loretta Bowersock is gone, but she will not be forgotten.
I know that my mother is acting as my guardian angel. And I have lots of dreams where she visits me, and she just tells me, "You're not alone. I'm with you."
Mama, loving ain't pretty much it all more. As the snow falls gently from above, I'm reminded of all that love. Each vacant memory, pure and bright, ancient scenes of our loves. No falling breeze drifting down in each delicate flake. Our love is found, whispers of you in the winter's chill.